Welcome to our Caregivers Panel. I'm here with Amanda, Dow, and Bob.
Hey, everybody.
Can everybody hear us all right? In the back?
Sarah, okay.
We're here with Amanda, Dow, and Bob. This is the Caregiver Panel. So what we're going to try and do is tell you at different points in the caregiver journey, kind of what it's like, what we wish we would have known, the things that would have made it easier for us, what to expect, maybe some hints on how to deal with things. Amanda, can you tell us real quick a little bit about your caregiver story?
Sure. I come from a family with, there's 3 girls, so I've got 2 sisters. I'm kind of the medical brain, but I'm lucky enough to have them along with me to really swap off and take turns helping take care of my mom. My mom remained independent. She was married, so my dad was present as well. But we started in 2012, and then the end of her journey in 2017, we were staying around the clock with her. So that's kind of where we came from. We, trips in the hospital and all, but that's a general basic overview.
Dow?
So my wife, Ann Dabbs, next to the wall there, is the patient. And she was diagnosed in 2016 and is doing remarkably well right now. But we have been through the various stages of understanding the diagnosis and learning how to manage insurance and manage crises and manage et cetera. So it's been an interesting road so far.
Bob?
Yeah, well, you've heard Mary Ann's story, so what my part of the journey was, I was fortunate enough to be working at somewhere. I was a salesman on the road, and I was able to take in between time a lot of times. So I was at pretty much every doctor visit, that kind of thing, and support her in that way. And as Dowd said, then you got to figure out the insurance angles and all kinds of things. So there's a lot of time spent with your loved one, which is a great thing, and it's all spent trying to figure out how to manage the disease, right?
So Amanda, Casey, and I are sisters. With my mom, when she was first diagnosed, it was the big, stressful, she's going to die right now, super scary. How are we going to afford this? We know she has to have this shot. We don't know anything about it. How many months of the shot can we afford because we don't know there's any help? We don't know anybody else with this. They've basically sent us home to die. So that was super stressful for us. You want to go ahead and tell kind of what happened next?
Sure. I worked in the medical field. We went to a very well-known hospital right off the bat because they had the best reputation that I knew of for cancer in general. We were highly disappointed, and they did, send my mom home, basically palliative care at that point. I don't take no for an answer, and neither does anybody in my family, so we immediately turned around and we started researching. I am not a WebMD researcher at all. I really don't like it. I do like medical journal articles and, some published publications. I was able to connect through social media with a patient who was seeing a specialist in New Orleans, and she helped to guide me to NCAN, and there we made an appointment with Dr. Waltering's team in New Orleans. At that point, when we went to, and actually Sarah was present for that visit, always one of the sisters accommodated my mom to her appointments. Even though my dad was present physically, mentally he could not handle or process the information. His personality type, he becomes very anxious, very overwhelmed, and we would oftentimes record what the doctor was saying. Of course, you've got to get permission, but we would always ask, is it okay if we record this visit so we could take notes later? Dr. Waltering would also allow me, if I couldn't physically be there because I may be a little bit of a control freak, to be present on the phone as well and ask questions. And that is so important to be prepared going in. We always tried to, have questions prepared that would be relevant, but that not necessarily something, we wanted them to be something that we would have to get his expertise on, not something that you could find out via another, alternative way.
So the beginning's very overwhelming. It's really hard to get your feet underneath you, and the first thing you want to do is research. But you have to be very careful that you're not researching WebMD, things that are not reputable, because you'll just scare yourself to death and have bad information. We also learned that we could work with a medical team and be helpful while we were at the hospital. That was something that we had to develop a knack for, instead of just being overbearing or being in the way. What can we do to be helpful? In the beginning, Mom, and really up until almost the end, she was so independent. It's hard to be a caregiver and learn where to draw the line without taking over their life. Just because you are the patient doesn't mean we need to wait on you hand and foot. We don't have to make every decision for you. We have to support you. And that is a tough line to follow. Dow, have you?
So our experience with caregiver patient is a little easier because Ann and I basically grew up with each other, have been married forever. So we have 2 adult sons. So she was diagnosed 6 years ago, so they were grown and we were empty nesters. We were in Washington State at that time, and she was having some issues that they just could see one of the cancer specialists there. And they gave us the standard story, 3 to 5 years to live. But Ann is a very type A person and said, I want to take this on my own and go learn it and research it. So she went and looked at the different doctors around and finally settled with Dr. Lou in Denver to do her debulking surgery in 2017. And that was a real turnaround because after that point she was much better. And she is now pretty stable actually right now. So it depends on, I think, your relationships. But for us, we've been together for so long, it's not difficult to tackle it one step at a time and move on. But, I'm still working, so FMLA is there, so when she needs to go to the doctor, I can do that, and we can go to Denver when we need to, that sort of thing. So it's okay right now.
In the beginning, what I wish we would have done is I wish we would have had a way to let the family know easier. Instead of Mom having to relay the story over and over and over. We tried Caring Bridge for a while, but people didn't really want to go get an update off of some other site, so that was hard. So finding out how to get that information out to where your story doesn't affect your identity so much. Yes, Miss Ann, you have cancer, but that's not all there is. You're still the same person you were before, and if you're not careful, it just takes over. So as a caregiver in the beginning, I think a big part of that is how can you relieve some of the burden, let them remain independent, but just take some of that work off. Michelle here in the front row was a caregiver too for a long time, and she brought up a good point about paperwork. The paperwork is overwhelming. It is overwhelming. If there's something you can do to help, maybe that's a good place to start. You don't even have to start with the bills, just some of the paperwork. There's something you can do to take some of the burden off without taking away the decision making and without taking over their life. Now, in the middle, during treatments, what was your role as caregiver?
Well, you're still in the middle.
We're still in the middle.
Hopefully.
Yeah, but you have middles along the way. You have a middle when you have a big debulking surgery. You have a middle when you're having some kind of treatment. When you're in the thick of it, then how does your role change?
So it becomes very supportive. For example, when she had her debulking surgery in Denver, we were living in Washington State. Our children were in Tennessee. And so it took a family effort for them to come out there and support me and her. And then we stayed in Denver for a while, and our son is a physician, and he flew back to Washington State with her after that. So it's a team effort to do that. But talking about the early part and getting over the shock is Ann found what we have now as a very good friend who has departed us. But she lived south of Seattle, and she had been through NETS for 17 years when Ann was diagnosed. And she had gone through PRRT. So we went to get to know her and visit her, and she's the one that taught us, you don't think about dying from cancer, you think about living with cancer. And that is the whole difference in the mental side of this thing, is if you live with it and don't worry about dying from it every day, then you can move on. So Ann runs the Tennessee support group for NCAN because she wants to pay forward what Sochi did for us. So 150 members now or something like that in East Tennessee in the NCAN chapter there. So it's a great thing to be able to think that way positively instead of on the downside all the time.
I think the thing that's been most helpful for us more than anything else was the information is great at the conference. You need the information. But really you could stay home and watch the videos, the information after they're posted. The thing that's been the most helpful are the relationships. Having somebody to call in the middle of the night because mom had surgery and she's crashing or she's in a lot of pain and just, is this normal? Well, your regular friends don't know. And if you call them and ask, they're going to panic. You call another Zebra's family and they totally get it. They say, oh yeah, mom did that exact same thing. That's probably normal. It's going to get better. Amanda, we had some really special friends. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you guys heard my speech last night about Alexis Wagner and Steve Wilcox, and our Steve and my mom were very similar with their disease. They had it very extensively. And we were able to communicate back and forth with each other on tips on things and on, all of that. It was extremely helpful. I do want to say another tip that I have, since we're kind of random here. We had a bag prepared for my mom that we carried around everywhere. It didn't matter if it was a quick trip into the store. She had carcinoid crisis regularly. We had to have octreotide on hand. We needed her enzymes because she needed them in order to digest her food properly. We all were concerned about that, so we made sure we had those things. And then we had that yellow ISI book from Mia. That thing is like a Bible in my house. I still have it. Why do I need it? I don't know, but I might need it.
We put tabs in it so that when we needed it, whoever was with her, we could just automatically go to where we needed it. It was amazing how much that helped and how much more credible we were when we were away from our regular doctors and something would happen. And towards the end, that happened quite a few times and we needed that book. But that was such a help and one of the best things. Those enzymes, we had them everywhere. I still find them sometimes in an old purse, but that was a way that we could help as a caregiver. It's hard to remember to do all the things you're supposed to do all the time as the patient. If I can take a little bit of that away, that's what I'm here for.
Also in that bag was a list of her medications, all of her medications that she would take, and then also her physician contact information. So that, and snacks, because my mama likes snacks. But we would carry that with us everywhere, and I can't tell you how helpful it was to be able to reference if we were in a random, zebras get sick from other things too. It's not like she only had carcinoid crisis to deal with. So sometimes she needed to go into the doctor's office because we were on vacation and whatever, she had a bad cold.
Or hurt her knee.
It would be nice to know, so then they could look up the medications quickly and vice versa. Yeah.
I think another smart thing that Ann has done is she has a medical ID bracelet. And it is a little different because it talks about carcinoid crisis, and it has my number as the contact information, but it says no epinephrine, that sort of thing, because there's an issue there as well. So it's just for the EMTs. If I'm not there and she goes into a crisis, they know what to do. The other thing that Ann's tumors did was they basically killed one of her kidneys because they cut off the ureter. And so she has to have kidney stents every 12 to 16 weeks. So that's an ongoing thing that we face all the time. And so there's lots of hospital visits, and I was interested to hear about the octreotide protocol for surgeries and anesthesia. She does that every time religiously, 2 hours before and an hour after every procedure. So I think that's an important thing to also think about and do.
Something y'all haven't had to deal with yet that we have been through is the end. And at the end, it was really hard to be able to say, Mom, this is your decision. Whatever you choose to do, that's up to you. That's okay. I love you. You said it so good earlier. Can you say that again? I know you don't want to be put on. She begged me not to put her on the spot, y'all.
I always said that, it's your decision. You're going through it. You make a decision. I love you. I'll support you and respect whatever your decision is. Mm-hmm. You're the one that's physically going through it. You feel it. I'm just along for the ride, but you ultimately have to make that decision.
And even if it's not from this, they've had so much pressure to fight for so long that you have to kind of remind them, this is your body. This is up to you. We love you and want you to be happy with whatever you choose to do.
And they'll tell you, they will let you know when they are ready. Our mom was a fighter up until the end, and she didn't want you coming up to her telling her it's time to go, because she felt only the Lord knew when her time to go was. But the last day, it was literally in the last few hours that we did give her that permission verbally. Up until that point, we were supportive to, as much as she would allow us. She wanted to push, well, by golly, we were going to find everything possible to keep her going forward, including reaching out to Mary Ann all the time. She probably had a nice phone bill for me, but yeah, so pay attention to them and stay in tune with them on what they're ready to do.
And then afterwards, it was like there was a big hole. I was with Mom around the clock for the last 3 months maybe. So then when she did pass, what am I going to do with my time? Like, I just feel like I need to take care of somebody and now nobody needs me. What do I do? And it was not my personality. It's not in my skill set to be a caretaker. TPN, y'all, I almost had a panic attack. That was not
phobia of needles.
Not my jam. But it's my mama. That's my greatest blessing. As a patient, you might feel bad that somebody's waiting on you and having to take care of you. It is such a blessing to us. Let us do it. Let us take care of you.
Yeah, and so many things were embarrassing to her also. So y'all have seen we can have a goofy side. So we tried to make light of the situation, and she did not want us bathing her at first, and Casey's getting in the shower with her, which was super awkward, but it broke the ice. So we tried to do what we could in that regards as well.
So do y'all have any questions, caregiver questions that we could address? We have a few more minutes. Okay. Michelle had a good point. She said that when her mom knew that she was getting close to the end, Michelle said, what do you want to do? Is there anything on your bucket list? We will make it happen. It doesn't matter what it costs me. My family is supportive, and as a caregiver, I have a spouse. He just kind of got put on the back burner, but he was supportive of me any way he could. That's a hard line. Something we need to remember is to take time away, to step back once in a while and be with that person, but you can do it together. You included your mom in everything. Yes?
So as a patient, knowing that I have someone who loves me is a wonderful caregiver, but might not seek out help on their own, right, for things that they're dealing with. Can you talk about, when you're dealing with those emotions and you're trying to be strong for that person, how can you seek that support for yourself as well?
Yeah, you have. Go ahead. You can go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to. You can look me up and talk to me at any point. So I'm letting the other folks speak. But the key thing, I think, patient and caregiver, you really need to exercise some patience in the relationship, because let's say as a patient you need a lot of help, so you don't feel good about that, and so you got this emotion, and your caregiver is working really, really hard, and all of a sudden you're at a point where you're really tired, and it's hard to have patience. and the thing doesn't go well then, you know, and it's something that happens to a relationship, to a person, to a relationship that is out of your control. So keep patience in your relationship. And it's, you know, if you get mad, and it might happen, right? No, it never does, right? Never happens.
It will happen.
But you walk away, you come back a couple minutes later, and you just reset. There's no explanation for it. You just got to do it. That's it. So, and we're kind of running out of time, so just finish up the thought. But I know we're all going to stay around, and we welcome your questions. Sorry that it's kind of a rush, trying to fit everything in. And you guys are so engaged that the Q&As, everything is just, it's long because you guys are great. So.
I just want to add that we do have a forum on Facebook that is just for caregivers. It is supposed to be a safe place. I apologize, it's not appropriate for patients. It is just for the caregivers. I'm one of the moderators along with Shane Peters, I believe is his last name. That group has not been very active. We are there if you want to private message us. If you need contact information, Marianne and Bob can give you that as well.
I think that's part of the problem with a caregiver, though, is we don't want to ask for help. It's so hard. Like, I don't need help. I'm independent. I'm fine. I'm not the one that's sick. But you, as caregivers ourselves, we need to reach out to each other and kind of check. But you have to have somebody relieve you at some point and just take an hour away. You've got to have a break and be out of that environment once in a while just to kind of refocus and reset and catch your breath.
One other thing I'd like to say as a patient is that I am begging you as a caregiver, take care of yourselves. You need to go to the doctors. You need to have your things done as well. Because sometimes as caregivers, you all forget that you need care as well. And if you get sick, you're not going to be able to take care of anybody else. So whether if you're a woman, you need your breast exams, you need your pap smears, you need all that stuff. Men, you need to go get that prostate checked, sorry. But it needs to be done because there's so many, I can't tell you how many times I get calls from a patient that is crying hysterical on the phone saying, my husband has this, or my wife has this. She was so busy taking care of me, she didn't take care of herself. And I'm going to give you a perfect example. Right there. In 2011, I believe it was, or 2010.
Go to the doctor.
Bob's family has a long history of cholesterol problems and heart attacks and things. And Bob's younger sister had a heart attack. And they had to do triple bypass. And I said to Robert, you really need to get checked. I'm fine. I'm like, no, you need to get checked. Well, Michael was got engaged, and we were having an engagement party. So he said, I promise you, after the engagement party, I'll go and get checked. Well, he went and he did the catheterization, and they couldn't even get through because 3 of his arteries were blocked. Well, actually, I think it ended up being 5 at the end. So he laid in the bed for 3 days with that thing up his groin because they were afraid to pull it out, that he was going to die on the table. So for 3 days he did that. This is what I'm talking about. Go to the doctors, because if something happened to him, who was going to take care of me? Who was going to take care of the kids? So make sure you go. Even if you feel absolutely fine, go for your annual checkups. Go for your blood work, get it done. We need you too. Because if you can't take care of us, then what do we have?
One more right here.
You got to start.
I go on a lot of support Facebook sites, and I read, comments people make. Well, a woman got on there who was the caretaker, and you could just tell that she was so tired and just so worn out. And, she was saying, I don't know how to do this anymore. And, I can't stand this and I can't stand that. And I mean, the people that were the patients were just putting really nasty, comments like, how dare you not, your spouse is sick and blah, blah, blah. Well, what about the people that They need help too. I mean, and nobody thinks about them.
Yeah, it is really hard. Luckily for us, our family was all supportive, and we had a lot of other friends. But in your community, if you see somebody that's a caregiver like that, reach out. Reach out because they need support as much as the patient does. When you're in the hospital having a debulking surgery, you don't need supper when you come home from the hospital cooked. But guess what? The family does. She might be on a restricted diet, but we're exhausted. That would be so nice. Think about those things for other people, and maybe we can spread the love.
Talk to NCAN. They're a great resource.
Well, thank you.